Today we're going to learn a little bit about identifying carbohydrates, and this is the first step towards carb counting. And carb counting is really going to help you with dosing insulin appropriately to foods that you're going to eat. So first of all, I want to give you an idea what carbohydrates are. So you're going to see there's a couple different food groups here. We're going to go over them and see which ones are carbs and which ones aren't. So carbohydrates, just to let you know, this may be new for you. I use the analogy of a car. So for the car to go, we need to put in fuel. So for fuel for us, we have to eat. And with our foods, we have 3 macronutrients or ingredients for our fuel that are important. The first one is carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are pretty much the energy. They allow us to feed the cells and get us to get up and go. Protein is the other ingredient, and protein is for building blocks for muscle and for tissue. The third ingredient is, or macronutrient, is fat, and fat is kind of our stored energy. We don't use it now, but it is available for us when we need it, so kind of like a spare tank of gas for a car. So for these 3 nutrients, when we consume food, our food gets then digested in our stomach, and then it turns into these nutrients available for us. So carbohydrate, when it gets digested, will become glucose, and you may have heard that word before. It's also called blood sugars, but we typically call it blood glucose. And blood glucose goes in our blood. The glucose is in our bloodstreams, and then it goes to our cells. Our cells need insulin, which is the hormone from your pancreas, to open up those cells, kind of like a key going to open up the cell and allowing the glucose to go in, and that's what gives us energy to do things. So with carbohydrates, we do want you to be aware of what they are, and they're in a lot of different foods. So we'll start by letting you know what kind of foods are carbs. So the easiest one could be your starches, and your starches, you're going to see all these different foods. So starches have carbohydrates in them, and that's going to include things like bread, tortillas. It's going to be even in legumes and beans, any of your rice, white rice, brown rice, pastas, and noodles, and even things like potatoes. So we do want you to be aware that these foods you're going to want to measure and count those carbs. Okay? Any questions so far? All right. The other ones in the starch group I'm going to bring over are cereals. So it could be dry cereal or hot cereal. So just being aware that even for breakfast, you do want to look and see what kind of, how much carbs there are. The other ones are going to be like fruit. So I have some examples here. All different fruit is going to have a different carbohydrate concentration, but even things like apples, bananas, grapes, any tropical fruits, any of those, you're going to want to pay attention to the portion. Dairy products, most of your dairy products are going to actually be considered carbohydrates. So things like your milk and yogurt, you're going to be wanting to know these are the ones you're going to have to count. Okay? And then the other one is vegetables. Now, some people will say that vegetables don't have carbs in it. They do have some carbs, and some of the vegetables, like our starchier vegetables like potatoes, corn, and peas, do have quite a bit of carbohydrates in them, so you will need to be measuring those, as well as even some of our non-starchy vegetables, like even a tomato is going to have carbohydrates in them. Broccoli will have them. So depending on the amounts, we do want to have you start counting those as well. Okay, so if you like those vegetables, you will be counting them. Okay? And then finally, of course, there's going to be the sweets or the desserts or other foods. So if you have like a candy bar or a dessert, we do have you count those as well. Those are definitely going to be carbohydrate rich foods. All right. So those are all carbs. What's not a carb is going to be your proteins and your fats. So we're not going to count the meats or chicken, those type of things, unless there is sauce or some kind of barbecue sauce or some kind of marinade that contains sugar on it. But of these foods that we've shown today, those are going to be the ones you want to look for. Okay, and then in the next, we're going to talk about carb counting.